The call came on a Tuesday morning just after I'd settled into my second coffee. I was scanning a debug log when my phone buzzed with an unknown number out of New York. I let it go to voicemail, at first assuming it was spam, but the number rang again seconds later. Something about the persistence made me answer. "Mr. Monroe, this is Melissa from Argo Financial. We're reaching out about late payments on your business line of credit." "I think you have the wrong person," I said, automatically half distracted. "I'm looking at the application now. Opened 3 months ago under your name and social security number. The balance is at $18,420, and your credit score dropped significantly due to missed payments." I sat there suddenly cold, despite the July heat. "I never opened a business account. I've never even heard of your bank." Melissa's tone shifted professional but wary now. "Then I suggest you contact the fraud department immediately." By the end of the day, I had 6 more calls from different banks and loan companies, all with my name, all with debt. When I pulled my credit report, it didn't feel real. Over $47,000 in accounts I had never touched. My score, once a solid 790, was now a train wreck. At first, I convinced myself there had been some kind of clerical error, maybe a data breach. My mind tried to bend the facts into something logical, something fixable. But then I saw the documents. PDFs from a loan application emailed to me by a sympathetic clerk who said I shouldn't be showing you this, but it looks weird. On page 2 was my signature, at least a close replica of it, signed under a date that made my stomach drop. It wasn't just a name. Whoever did this had my social security number, my birth date, my mother's maiden name. I knew exactly who would have all that information. 4 years ago, after the car accident that took our parents Darian and I split the inheritance, I used mine for the down payment on my apartment in Boulder. Darian said he had plans, big ones, a clothing brand, maybe a music studio. It vanished in less than a year. That night I pulled up the PDF again and zoomed in on the signature. The curve of the M was shakier than mine, but the loop on the R identical. I didn't want to believe it, but denial only lasted until the second document arrived, and the third. I drove to Darian's apartment the next morning, a cramped unit in a sketchy part of Aurora that he once claimed was temporary, just until the business takes off. I barely remembered the drive there. My hands shook on the steering wheel the whole way, and every red light gave me time to imagine a version of this where he'd admit guilt and we could fix it quietly like brothers. He opened the door in gym shorts and a hoodie, sipping from a green smoothie. He looked surprised to see me, but not alarmed. "Ellis," he said, casual. Didn't expect a house call. "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside. He glanced over his shoulder, then walked back toward the kitchen. "Coffee, Darian," I snapped. "Someone used my name to open 7 accounts. Loans, credit cards. They have everything. My social, my birth date, my signature." He paused. A flicker of something passed across his face. Not guilt, calculation. "You're acting like I didn't tell you." I froze. "Tell me what?" He turned to face me, arms crossed, leaning against the counter like we were having a philosophical debate. "We talked about pooling our resources after Mom and Dad passed. You said you'd help me get my studio off the ground. You even said you'd co-sign if I needed it. That never happened." "Really?" He raised his eyebrows, then walked to his bedroom. I followed. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file folder. Inside were copies printed, highlighted, tabbed. A contract titled Monroe Family Financial Agreement, dated 2 years ago. My name typed neatly under authorizing party. "I don't know what this is," I said, flipping through the pages. "You signed it," he said, calm. "Right after Dad's memorial. You said we should look out for each other. You were drunk, maybe, but it's binding. And I've got 2 more authorizations where you gave me access to open lines for the brand. He let that sink in, then added, "If you report me for fraud, that's defamation, and breach of familial contract. My lawyer already drafted the countersuit." The room felt smaller by the second. "You forged my signature," I said, voice brittle. He shrugged. "Prove it." I stared at him. "At the brother I used to share bunk beds with, who cried when our dog died, who once punched a kid in the face for stealing my Halloween candy." I kept looking, hoping to find a trace of that boy. But he wasn't there. He turned back toward the kitchen. "You want this to go away? Sign over the deed to the condo? It's worth what, $290 that covers the debt. We'll call it even. You want my home. I want peace." When I didn't answer, he added, "Think it over. I'm giving you till the end of the month. After that, everything goes to court." I walked out without saying another word, but my silence didn't mean surrender. I knew I couldn't fix this as a brother. I'd have to fight him as an enemy. The first thing I did when I got home was lock every account I had. Credit freeze, fraud alerts, new passwords, multi-factor authentication, even changed my email. It felt like locking the doors after someone had already emptied the house, but it was all I had. I printed every bank statement, every email thread, every login notification I could find. I started a spreadsheet color-coded and time-stamped, not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I needed to believe I still had some control. Then the phone calls started. My cousin Braden asked if I was doing okay in that slow, cautious way people use when they're not sure if you're about to break down. My Aunt Laurel left a voicemail asking why I was attacking Darian after everything he's been through. A friend I hadn't seen in months texted, "Hey man, I heard you're going through something. You want to talk," but didn't reply when I asked what he meant. Darian was already working behind the scenes, framing me as unstable, probably saying I was paranoid, that I couldn't handle stress, that I'd turned on my own family out of grief. I could hear his voice in their comments, calm, composed, manipulative. The final blow came when Linda, my manager at Aerotech, called me into her office. "I wanted to let you know," she said, "HR received an anonymous email this morning." "What kind of email?" She hesitated. "It included links to a civil case. Claimed you were involved in a family financial dispute, possible fraud. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you know how the company handles these things. There'll be an internal review." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You think I did something?" "No," she said quietly. "But policy is policy. You may be asked to go on leave during the investigation." When I got home, I found Milo waiting on my front steps. I hadn't told him everything, but I didn't need to. One look at me and he said, "Tell me what you need. I'll help. I need a lawyer." He nodded. "Then let's find one." That night I submitted a fraud report to the police. The next day I got a call from Detective Ramona Chen. Her voice was calm, methodical, and precise. She asked for documentation timelines, anything I could send. I promised to deliver everything. "Just know," she said, "cases like this take time, and if your brother has real access to your information, it won't be easy." By the end of that week, the only people who still believed me were Milo and a woman I hadn't met yet. Her name was Natalie Keene, and she was a lawyer. Natalie Keene looked younger than I expected, but her demeanor cut through the room like a scalpel. I sat across from her in her office as she flipped through the documents I'd brought copies of Darian's so-called agreements, fake authorizations, trust papers, with my name neatly typed under every signature line. "Whoever did this," she said, not looking up, "knew exactly what they were doing." "It was my brother," I said quietly. She paused, then finally met my eyes. "Then your brother's either a very good liar, or he's been planning this for a long time." She pulled up the PDFs on her monitor and began analyzing metadata. Several of the documents were created over 2 years ago. The timestamps weren't faked. Darian had been laying this groundwork for longer than I'd realized. The fake emails came from an address that was one letter off from mine. The signature on the family agreement had been traced from an old lease I'd signed 5 years ago. "You're looking at a long fight," she said, "but we can build this." The next day, I found a thick envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a summons. Darian had filed a civil suit against me, breach of fiduciary duty, defamation, and $500,000 in damages. His lawyer, someone named Richard Delaney, had also filed a motion for a temporary restraining order. Attached were printed text messages, doctored ones. One showed me writing, "If you don't back off, you'll regret it." Another, "I'll destroy you if you come near my home." Except I'd never written them, not in those words, not in that tone. He'd edited real texts, twisted my words into threats. I brought the packet straight to Natalie. She didn't flinch, just added it to the growing file. "They're trying to frame you as unstable," she said. "The same narrative he's pushing to family and your employer. Don't speak to him. Don't respond to anything. From now on, everything goes through me." That afternoon, Linda called me back into her office. This time, HR was present. "We're placing you on paid administrative leave," she said. "This isn't a judgment-just policy while the legal process unfolds." I nodded. I didn't argue. I was too numb. That night, I turned off my phone and lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what normal had ever felt like. By morning, I had 4 new voicemails, 2 from Banks, 1 from my aunt, and 1 from Milo. And in the last one, he simply said, "Call me. You're not going to believe what he just did." When I called Milo back, his voice was tight. "He tried to break into your place." "What? I just talked to Susan, the building manager. Darian showed up with a locksmith and a lease agreement, claimed he was a co-owner who'd been illegally locked out." I was already grabbing my keys. By the time I got to the building, Susan met me in the lobby, arms crossed and jaw tight. "He said you were having a mental breakdown," she said. "He was crying. Told the locksmith you'd changed the locks on him because he confronted you about your spending. Claimed you both inherited the condo and you were shutting him out." I clenched my fists. "Did he get in?" "No, I called you, and when you didn't answer, I stalled. The locksmith backed off once I said there was no record of his name on the deed. But 3 of your neighbors saw the whole thing. I thanked her, then went straight to Natalie. She was already on the phone with someone when I walked in." "Alina Cross," she mouthed. "His ex." Alina had reached out after seeing Darian's name in a Reddit thread someone posted summarizing the case. She told Natalie that Darian had once bragged to her about how easy it was to copy my signature, said he'd practiced on old birthday cards and bank statements, tracing them while half drunk and laughing, claimed he could take Ellis's identity better than Ellis lived it. Natalie's face was calm when she hung up, but her eyes were sharp. "She's willing to sign a sworn statement," said she'd testify if needed. It was the first real crack in his mask, something we could hold on to. Later that day, Natalie had a digital forensic analyst go through the PDFs again. They found metadata embedded deep in the file structure creation dates from 20 months ago. Some of the documents had been revised multiple times over the course of a year. "He started planning this while you were still talking to him weekly," she said. We brought the findings to Detective Chen. She listened carefully, took notes, and nodded as we explained the forged documents, the fake lease attempt, the ex-girlfriend's statement. But her response was frustratingly steady. "He used real information," she said. "Real social, real address, family access. That muddies everything. We need hard proof of intent. And that takes time." I left the precinct feeling like I'd just been told to hold my breath until further notice. That night, Aunt Laurel called again. This time I picked up. "I don't know what Darian's done," she said, "but dragging family into court, Ellis, we don't do this to each other. Whatever's happening, keep it in the family. You're embarrassing everyone." I hung up without answering. By morning, Natalie forwarded me another message. Alina had sent a follow-up screenshots of texts, one of which read, "He'll never see it coming. I'll own that condo before winter." Milo didn't ask for permission, he just did it. The GoFundMe went live 3 days after the last hearing, and within a week it had raised over $6,000. Friends, old co-workers, even strangers who'd read parts of the story online chipped in. I hated needing the help, but I was past pride. Survival was expensive. With the funds, Natalie brought in Dev, a forensic document analyst. He didn't look like much quiet, plain-spoken, but his work was ruthless. He tore through every file Darian had submitted, the fake financial agreement, the trust documents, the email printouts. Every one of them showed signs of tampering, traced signatures, fonts inconsistent with the dates, metadata buried deep in the files pointing to edits made on Darian's personal laptop. He'd been building this for nearly 2 years. While Dev worked, I installed surveillance in my apartment, cameras in the entry living room hallway, everything backed up to a cloud account. I logged every text call and conversation. I scanned every envelope Darian ever sent. My life turned into a legal archive. Dr. Ainsley Rourke, my therapist, helped me sort through the emotional wreckage. She called what Darian had done a slow erasure of identity. Financial abuse paired with psychological manipulation. The worst kind, she said, because it hides behind shared history. Then Alina Cross came through. She sent Natalie a signed statement detailing how Darian had practiced forging my signature, used my old documents, and once laughed about how I'd never see it coming. Screenshots of texts backed it up. He wasn't just desperate, he was strategic, patient, cruel. Natalie packaged everything and delivered it to Detective Chen. This time, Chen didn't hesitate. "It's enough to escalate," she told us. "Keep collecting. He's not done yet." She was right. 48 hours later, I received an email notification, notice of civil hearing, property dispute and damages. Darian had filed to expedite the suit. I opened the attached PDF and saw it line after line accusing me of emotional cruelty, financial abandonment, and fraud. At the bottom was his signature, and mine, except I never signed it. The civil hearing didn't feel like justice. It felt like theater. Darian walked in like he'd just buried someone. He wore a drab sweater, his face hollow, his steps slow and calculated. I barely recognized him. Gone was the bravado. In its place was a carefully constructed image of quiet suffering. His lawyer, Richard Delaney, began with a slideshow, yes, a literal slideshow of childhood photos. Darian and me riding bikes, Darian blowing out birthday candles, a photo of the two of us at our parents' funeral. It wasn't evidence. It was sentiment designed to paint me as the cold, unfeeling brother who'd abandoned family. Then came the checks. Copies of birthday and holiday gifts I'd sent Darian over the years. Small, normal things, $100 for his birthday, a Christmas gift here and there, but Richard framed them as a consistent financial relationship, demonstrating implied support. They even brought in a distant cousin, Celia, who claimed I once told her I'd always take care of Darian. Maybe I did say it. Maybe I meant it. But not like this. They read out my texts selectively. Cropped lines like "I'll always be here for you after our mom's funeral" presented like I'd signed a contract to fund his life forever. I felt myself unraveling until Natalie stood. She called Alina Cross to the stand. Alina spoke clearly, recounting how Darian had forged my signature and bragged about stealing my condo. Then came the forensic evidence, forged documents, spoofed emails, metadata, showing years of manipulation. Judge Whitaker listened without much expression. When it was over, he said, "I'm not making a decision until the criminal case concludes." He set the next hearing for 30 days later. Outside, Darian stopped me near the elevators. "You're ruining everything," he whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" I said nothing. Natalie stepped between us and handed me a new envelope. "He filed something else," she said. "You need to see it." The trial lasted 5 days. It felt like a lifetime pressed into a single week, my entire world dissected in front of strangers. The prosecution moved with precision. Security footage from the banks showed Darian in clear detail opening accounts under my name. The digital forensics team demonstrated how he'd forged documents, manipulated metadata, and spoofed emails. Alina testified again this time, facing a jury, her voice unwavering as she repeated Darian's words from that drunken night. When the verdict came, I didn't breathe. Guilty on all counts. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. Darian sat frozen for half a second, then turned to me. His mouth twisted into something between rage and betrayal. "You destroyed our family," he screamed as the bailiff gripped his shoulder. "This is on you." I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I could. The judge sentenced him to 5 years parole eligibility in 3. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters lingered near the door. I kept my head down, feeling the weight of a win that didn't feel like one. Outside, Natalie stood next to me, watching the news vans roll in. "We'll file to dismiss the civil suit first thing tomorrow," she said. "This conviction kills their claim." I nodded, but the relief didn't land. The damage was done. My name smeared my credit, ruined my family, fractured beyond repair. I hadn't seen my reflection clearly in months, and now that the mirror was clearing, I wasn't sure I recognized the man staring back. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with a list of every expense, every court date, every conversation I'd recorded. The storm had passed, but everything it touched was still drenched, and I wasn't done cleaning up the wreckage, not yet. The next hearing was already on the calendar. The civil case folded quickly after the conviction. Judge Whitaker dismissed every one of Darian's claims with prejudice. Our countersuit landed clean $150,000 in damages and legal fees. I wouldn't see most of that any time soon, if ever, but the judgment itself felt like a line in the sand. The court had seen me, and they believed me. When I returned to work, Linda met me with a quiet nod and a folder. Inside was not just my reinstatement letter, but a promotion. "You kept your integrity," she said, "even when you had every reason to lose it. It took months to start fixing the credit. I worked with a recovery agency, filed affidavits, showed proof of the conviction. Slowly accounts were closed, balances wiped, reports updated. My score began to crawl upward. The trust I'd once placed in people without question, that didn't return so easily. Still, I tried. I joined a support group for financial abuse survivors. I started dating again. Her name was Avery. She asked questions, listened carefully, never rushed anything. She knew the whole story before we met for coffee the first time. Darian wrote me twice from prison. I didn't open the letters. He had taken enough space in my head, enough years off my life. I owed him nothing. I didn't just win a case. I reclaimed my name, my peace, and the right to never apologize for protecting myself.